What if the person you trusted the most looked at you differently one day? My name is Chloe, and what happened between my father and me, I never saw it coming. I had just turned 21, stepping into adulthood with a mix of anticipation and nostalgia. I lived with my father, Daniel, ever since I lost my mother to illness at a young age. It had always been just the two of us, leaning on each other, filling every void with care and presence. Growing up, he was everything. A protector, a provider, a man who wore both parental roles with pride. He braided my hair before school, stayed up late helping with projects, and cooked my favorite meals on birthdays. Life felt full, even in its incompleteness. But everything began to shift the year I left for university. That moment of departure, standing at the doorway of our house with bags packed, remains vivid in my memory. I was thrilled, naive, a girl ready to taste freedom without knowing how sharp it could be. University opened a world I had never known. I found myself surrounded by vibrant personalities, spontaneous parties, late-night chats, and the thrill of self-discovery. At first, I stood on the sidelines, too shy, too cautious. But slowly I let go. The curiosity consumed me. Bar nights became routine. The smoky air, the glowing dance floors, the sharp taste of wine, they became part of me. I remember my first cocktail, the bitterness lingering on my lips, and the laughter of friends echoing around me. I wasn't the girl who left home anymore. One night, during a birthday celebration, I met someone. His smile knocked the air from my lungs, and before I knew it, we were swapping stories under the stars and dreaming of futures we didn't yet understand. It was beautiful, fleeting but real. The year flew by. I had changed. I wasn't just a student anymore. I was someone who'd felt love, heartbreak, freedom, and regret. And when the dorms emptied for summer break, silence greeted me. Returning home after a year felt like stepping into a familiar song with unfamiliar lyrics. I opened the door quietly, hoping to surprise Dad. He sat watching TV, unaware of my arrival. A mischievous plan brewed in my mind. As I crept closer, ready to startle him, he suddenly turned and caught me mid-step. In one motion, he swept me into his arms. "You came back in silence," he said, smiling. We laughed, truly laughed. He pointed to the mirror beside the TV. I turned, and there I was, reflected clearly. My every movement visible. That small moment, that shared laugh, brought a warmth I hadn't felt in a long time. Later, I told him I needed to unpack. He nodded with his usual calm grace. As I moved through the house, everything smelled like memory, like home. That evening, we sat down for dinner. The familiarity was comforting, yet I noticed something new. My father looked different, stronger, confident, almost like time had honored him instead of aging him. Nearing 50, yet his body was as fit as any man half his age. He wore a tank top and his muscles were clearly defined. For a second, I stared, confused. Why had I never noticed this before? He caught me looking. "What thoughts occupy your mind?" he asked gently. I smiled, shook my head. "Nothing, just tired." He nodded. "You've grown, Chloe. This past year has shaped you." "You have too, Dad," I said. And I meant it. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to that moment at dinner. The way his voice felt deeper. The way his eyes lingered. A strange confusion crept in, one I didn't want to name. The next day, the summer heat was unbearable. I tried to fan myself, but the air was still. The humidity clung to my skin. I finally gave in and went to the bathroom for a cold shower. As the water slid down my back, a wave of calm washed over me. The frustration melted away. Eyes closed, I breathed deeply, the world outside dissolving for a while. But suddenly, I felt something. A presence. A sense of being watched. I turned, and there, through the barely cracked door, was Daniel, my father. Our eyes met. The moment froze in time. His eyes were wide, as if he hadn't expected to be caught. My heart pounded against my chest like a warning bell. I froze, every muscle locked in place under the cascading water. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The soft hiss of the shower was the only sound that dared to move. Then he blinked, as if waking from a strange dream, and quickly stepped back. I heard the shuffle of his feet, the nervous clearing of his throat. I'm
sorry.
I didn't realize, he murmured from behind the door. His voice was raspy, fragile. I wrapped myself in a towel and exited the bathroom minutes later. My hair still damp, skin still flushed, not just from heat, but from something else entirely. He was sitting in the living room, back rigid, eyes on the floor. The television was on, but neither of us was watching. I sat beside him, our shoulders inches apart. The silence grew heavy. Did you catch all that just now? I asked softly. My voice was playful, but underneath it quivered a question I didn't dare say aloud. He flinched.
No.
Of course not. That wasn't my intention. He tugged at the hem of his shirt, trying to collect himself. I turned to look at him. His cheeks were red. His fingers curled tightly around his knees. There was something unresolved in his expression, like he was wrestling with a version of himself he didn't want to see. Our gazes met. I didn't look away. Don't evade me, I whispered. He exhaled, slow and strained. This isn't going to work, he said, but his voice was unsure, more like a plea than a declaration. We both knew what had shifted. A boundary had been crossed, not through touch, but through something far more dangerous, awareness. I thought it would pass, I murmured. But the day you looked at me differently, I realized nothing would ever be the same. He didn't respond. His silence was louder than words. He just stared at the floor like it held answers he couldn't find. For days after, we moved around each other like ghosts. Every shared glance lingered too long. Every brush of fingers during dinner felt electric. At night, I would lie awake, hearing his footsteps, wondering if he too was wrestling with thoughts that had no name. Time passed. The heat continued, but so did our silence. And in that silence, we grew closer, quietly, invisibly, dangerously. One afternoon, I returned home from the grocery store. As I stepped into the kitchen, I found him wiping sweat from his brow, the sunlight bouncing off his bare shoulders. He looked up at me, startled, and for a second, everything else disappeared. I didn't hear you come in, he said. I didn't knock, I replied, not moving. My breath was shallow. Something shimmered in the air between us. Uncertainty, tension, history. I stepped closer. He stepped back. Chloe, he said, voice low. We shouldn't keep walking this line. I tilted my head. Then stop looking at me like you don't remember who I am. I never forgot, he said. That's what makes it harder. My heart ached at those words, but I didn't retreat. I just stood there, letting the silence stretch. That night, the house was too quiet. Every room echoed with unspoken thoughts. I stood in front of my mirror, trying to see what he might have seen. Was it wrong that I had changed? That I wasn't the little girl he once braided hair for? I lay in bed, eyes open, questions gnawing at me. What is love when it walks too close to the edge of reason? What do you do when admiration turns into something else? The morning after, sunlight spilled through the curtains in golden waves. I stood at the window, watching the garden Dad had nurtured over the years. Everything outside was unchanged, but inside something had shifted beyond repair. I made breakfast.
Toast. Eggs.
Coffee just the way he liked it. He entered the kitchen shirtless again, a towel draped over his shoulder, fresh from his morning workout. I glanced at him, then quickly looked away, unsure how long I'd been staring. He paused when he saw the table. You made this? He asked. I remembered how you like your eggs, I said softly. He sat. We ate in silence, each clink of fork against plate too loud in the quiet. I couldn't stop noticing his every move, how deliberate it felt, how cautious. After breakfast, I moved to the living room and began flipping through one of Mom's old photo albums. Her smile stared back at me from every page.
So warm.
So real. She had loved him, and he had loved her. For a moment, I hated myself for what I felt. And then, I didn't. He sat beside me. She would have liked seeing you like this, he said, voice distant. Strong. Independent. She'd hate this tension between us, I replied, eyes still on her photograph. He didn't answer. I closed the album. That night, the power went out. A summer storm rolled over the city, thunder booming in the distance. The lights flickered and died. The house fell into darkness, save for the faint glow of candles I'd lit. I sat on the couch. He joined me moments later, holding a flashlight that cast flickering shadows across the room. The air was dense with silence. You know, I said, I used to think home meant safety. But lately, it feels like standing on the edge of something I can't name. He didn't respond at first. Then he whispered, maybe we're both standing there. Outside, the rain poured. Inside, my chest thundered louder. He turned to me. I don't know when this changed, he said. I don't know if it was the day you left or the day you returned. I breathed slowly. You looked at me differently. He nodded. And you didn't look away. I stared at him through the candlelight. Because I couldn't. In that moment, the silence between us was louder than the rain. It screamed everything we dared not say. Then came the moment that altered the course of everything. He reached forward, brushing a damp strand of hair from my face. His touch lingered, soft, hesitant. We can't, he said. But his hand didn't move. I know, I whispered, even as I leaned into it. He pulled back suddenly, standing with a jolt. This isn't us, Chloe. We're just lost. That's all. Lonely. My heart thudded painfully. Then why does it feel like the only thing that makes sense? He paced. Because we're human. We're weak sometimes. I stood. Weakness doesn't last this long. He stared at me then, truly stared. There was anguish in his eyes.
Guilt.
Want. Confusion. We need space, he finally said. Before this becomes something we can't undo. I nodded. But deep down I knew. We had already crossed that invisible line. Not with our bodies, but with our hearts. And that's the one place where damage is hardest to repair. The days that followed were filled with polite distance. We moved around each other like planets in orbit, close enough to feel the gravity, far enough to avoid collision. I tried to return to normal, reading books in the living room, helping him with small repairs around the house, even preparing dinner as I used to. But everything was different now. Every touch of his hand, every glance, carried a weight we both tried to ignore. Some nights I'd find myself lying awake, wondering if he felt it too.
The ache. The pull.
The guilt. One afternoon, I found a note on the kitchen table. Gone for the weekend. Need some time.
Don't worry about me.
Dad. I read it over and over. The way he signed it, Dad, struck something deep in me, as if he was trying to remind himself.
Or me.
That weekend, the house was quiet in a way that felt unfamiliar. Not peaceful, empty. I wandered through each room like a ghost, memories whispering from every corner. My childhood drawings still hung crooked on the hallway wall. His old cologne lingered on the coat rack. I sat alone at the dining table, my untouched meal in front of me. And for the first time in weeks, I cried. Tears not just of confusion or guilt, but grief. For the girl I used to be. For the father I used to know. For the innocence that had quietly slipped away the moment our gazes had locked too long in the bathroom mirror. When he returned, we didn't speak of what had happened. Not a word. But something had changed in both of us. He no longer looked at me with questions. And I no longer waited for answers. Instead, we started rebuilding the silence, not with avoidance, but with boundaries. Gentle ones. Careful ones. Necessary ones. Time passed. Eventually, I returned to university. I carried myself differently now, more cautious, more aware of how thin the line can be between affection and temptation, between memory and mistake. Graduation came and went. He sat in the front row, clapping the loudest. He hugged me tightly afterward, but I could feel the restraint in his touch. I mirrored it. Years later, I would often look back on that summer, not with anger, not even with shame, but with a quiet understanding of how fragile we all are. Love, when misplaced, can become something dangerous. Something that lingers in the corners of memory like a whisper. And if we're not careful, it can erase the very people we once promised to protect. So if you find yourself at a crossroads between emotion and reason, pause.
Breathe.
Remember who you were before the line began to blur. Because crossing it might feel thrilling in the moment, but the echo it leaves behind never really fades. Do not trade your peace for a fleeting emotion. Cherish those you love by protecting what is sacred, not surrendering to what is easy. Trust, once cracked, rarely mends in silence. Choose wisely, even when your heart whispers otherwise.